It wasn't like I wasn't working. This is the work session for the Cuyahoga County Council for July the 26th, 2001, being held in the Cuyahoga County Justice Center Council chambers. And I'm proud to announce that this is the first council work session and council meeting that will be broadcast live stream on the internet. Now that we've called the meeting to order, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Simon?
Here.
Mr. Greenspan?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Brady?
Present.
Mr. Germana?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Schron?
Here.
Ms. Conwell? Here. Ms. Conley?
Here.
There's a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to call to the podium Mr. Jeff Applebaum for what I believe is the third of our updates on the Medical Mart. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here to present what is our third update. Last update, I believe, was the 14th of June. And I have a presentation to make about the status of the project. We're also going to have a guide about where they stand. I'd like to start out, and by the way, this is a project summary. This hasn't changed. There we are. You haven't missed anything yet. Okay. This is the project summary slide that we've had before, and once again, nothing here has changed. Building size, site area, development budget, everything is the same from a macro viewpoint, and you can look at that, but there's nothing different about that. With respect to design, because as we all know, this is a design-build project. We continue to complete design while we're building. We are at this stage. In May of this year, we received the so-called 75% complete construction document set. We spent an enormous amount of time in meetings looking through them, reviewing them, commenting on them. We had major meetings in May, June, and a few weeks ago in July. We now have resolved all outstanding issues, and we are in the position to very shortly indicate our formal acceptance of the 75% document set. As you may recall, my consulting group does this in conjunction with Conventional Wisdom, which is our consultant for convention center work. They've worked side by side with us along with our county team, and so all issues have been resolved, so we are through that aspect of design. The next milestone, and it's a big one, is that later on in just a few weeks in August, we will get our first look at what is referred to as the 100% complete construction document set. So we will see really the full-blown design. There's some elements that we know by definition come a little bit later, such as some signage information, and there'll be some alternatives that, depending on our budget, we'll get to select from. But we have we'll get these documents in August, and we will have a few months of very concentrated work, pouring through the design, making sure it's true to the prior design, true to the program. But that process is working very well, and we continue to move along with respect to our design process. Construction process, the construction update, these are things that they're a little more visible to you as you see them or hear them or feel them with the shaking every day. We are still on schedule for an August 31, 2013 substantial completion date. Nothing has changed with respect to our overall project schedule. The project is now 14% complete based upon billings to date for work in place and stored materials. So from the perspective of what's actually being put in the ground as a percentage of our overall status, 14% of the work is done and in place. Of the 53 major bid packages, 39 have now been awarded. That does not mean that every subcontract within them or every SBE contract has been concluded, but the primes for 39 of the 53 bid packages have been awarded, which is on schedule, exactly where we thought we'd be at this point in time. We still have opportunities for additional contract awards, but that's where we are right now. And we're still on schedule to receive a LEED Silver certification, which is one of our goals for the project. To drill down a little bit more, and I don't have the pictures I had last time with all the arrows, and you didn't just walk the site. And by the way, we're going to invite you to do it again because things have changed pretty dramatically out there. But right now, it's still a lot of underground work, a lot of foundation work. You don't see, it's the iceberg. You don't see 95% of what's really going on down there because it isn't foundations. North of Lakeside, the area actually underneath Lakeside is now ready for foundations. A lot of the work has been done. The columns we talked about have been cut. New columns are coming in. Micro piles and other foundation systems continue in the loading dock area. Waterproofing and slab foundation work continues for elevator, pits, and stairs. One thing I want to tell you about, because I've received at least 3 calls from reporters in the last 24 hours about this, now that the Browns are going to play football, everyone is asking, my goodness, there's stairs up there. How are people going to get to the Browns game? Because there's going to be exhibition games in August or later, or events up there. What are we doing about the Brown stairs? Well, we've thought about this. We've spent a lot of time on this issue, and let me tell you about that issue. There is an agreement called the Pedestrian Access Agreement. It's actually a very complex agreement that we have completed the negotiation of, and I'm going to talk about agreements on the website in a minute. This agreement, which was just recently executed, it's a 4-party agreement. The county, the city, the Browns, and MMPI are parts of this agreement. The reason, by the way, that I have not brought this agreement to the county in any form yet is because this does not cost you any money. This is an agreement, it's an operational agreement, and so this is nothing, it's been executed by the county executive, but this is nothing that comes within the parameter of an expenditure agreement for us. It's an operational agreement. What this basically provides for is the following. The stairs on the north side of our site that lead to the bridge that go to the Brown Stadium, that is being restored, and there's going to be an access way, which I'm going to show you in a second, that go from the stairs all the way to Lakeside Avenue. So during events, during the construction phase, whenever there is a game at Brown Stadium, people are going to be able to enter a passageway, a fenced-in gated passageway on Lakeside Avenue. They're going to be able to go north across our site. They're going to, and it's going to be basically a temporary concrete pavement, so it's going to be a very safe environment. They're going to be able to go north. They're going to be able to get to the Browns Bridge, and they're going to, or the stairs, I should say, and then go over the bridge to Brown Stadium. It's going to be available several hours before games, during games, after games. But when there's no event at Brown Stadium, it's going to be closed off and restricted because we are in a construction zone, and that has to be maintained as a safe area. The access will be maintained and secured by our construction manager, Turner. We have negotiated certain costs to be paid by the city and the Browns. After all, Turner has to maintain it. In the winter, if it snows, they have to plow it. They have to provide security for it. And so there are some costs involved. We have negotiated responsibility for that. That will be paid by others. So during the entire construction phase, there will not be an event that people do not have access through our site over those stairs to the game. And yes, this is completely insured. There's not any risk that the county maintains because we're doing this, or additional risk. Once the project opens, there's also a detailed operational agreement in this document that calls for the Mall C stairs to continue to operate and for there to be access post-completion. There's some issues with respect to operations because we're going to have operations in the area, but that's all worked out in an operations agreement. What you see on the screen is the first page of this pedestrian access agreement. I do want to announce one thing. This agreement and a substantial amount of additional information is about to go up on a new county webpage, a website for this project. We have accumulated a great deal of information. We've been working with individuals at the county about how this can best be put up. We now have submitted a substantial amount of information which is indexed. We've actually looked at a draft of what this is going to look like, and very shortly, and I'm talking about within the next couple days, you're going to see a pretty substantial uploading of information on the county website that has all of the agreements, the substantial agreements we've entered into, plus a lot of other information about the project, some of which I will discuss today. So that is something that we can look forward to, supporting the transparency of this entire project, including this agreement that I'm talking about right now. To give a clearer view, by the way, of how this works, and I don't know if you can see this, but basically, that's the bridge, the paved area we're putting in. That's the stairs, what we call the Malsey stairs, and that is actually going to, they're being renovated. They are in pretty poor condition, so we're restoring those stairs. And then this comes straight across our site to Lakeside Avenue, and there'll be basically a fence or gate that opens up at Lakeside Avenue where people can come from Lakeside, go right across the way they used to come across. Now, this is no small matter for us to put together, because I'm going to show you a different photograph that tells you exactly what's involved here. If you take a look at, and I apologize, I know these are small screens for you to see, but I'll describe it to you. If you take a look north of Lakeside Avenue, see all that blue material to the left that's north of Lakeside Avenue? And I don't know if you remember from your site tour, there is an enormous, basically, hole there. What you see to the right of that blue material is the old wall of the convention center. In order to neutralize pressure, all that material to the west had to be removed. So there's a huge, basically, hole there. In order to get this ready, what they are doing right now is they are filling up that backfill area, because that is where this paved area goes to Lakeside Avenue. So right now the steps are being restored, the concrete is being put back. That whole hole and that blue material is there just to protect it. That was sort of like a membrane to keep water from getting in there. That is all being backfilled. Concrete will be on top of that, and that's all going to be ready by August 1, which is just a few days from now. So that is, and we always knew we were going to do that, and that's being implemented right now, so we're not going to have any issues with respect to missing Browns games. Other highlights, that's kind of what's going on north of Lakeside, south of Lakeside. I've spent a lot of time talking to you about these caisson operations. You went down and you saw the caisson operations. Remember, there's approximately 66 of these major structures that go down to bedrock, that 180 feet or so that support the whole structure. 26 of those caissons have now been poured. That's been the major activity on the site. You're about to see the first grade beams. If you go look at the site and go to the southeast corner of the site, you're going to see these large, basically concrete beams, horizontal structures. They're going to start to be installed on top of micro piles and perhaps in some cases on caissons. So you're going to start to see these grade beams, which are these structural elements, come to the site. One thing that you don't see is what's happening off-site. The major steel members are now in the process of being fabricated off-site in fabrication plants to shortly come to the project for when the steel operation is ready. Public auditorium itself, the separation work continues. It's almost complete, so a substantial amount of work has been done on separating public auditorium. And the Medical Mart itself, the east side of the Medical Mart, the lower part of the Medical Mart, we've had a major concrete slab pour. And just to give you an idea of an operation that you probably didn't see unless you happened to be at the Medical Mart at 3 o'clock in the morning, this is what happened Friday, Friday the 15th, starting at midnight and finishing at 9 o'clock in the morning. There was actually a concrete pour on the eastern portion of the Medical Mart building. The Medical Mart building has a high portion and a lower portion, because the lower portion is at the same level as the Convention Center exhibit hall. This is the slab we're talking about. So in the middle of the night, 320 truckloads, and I'm talking about large concrete trucks, came in and poured 3,200 cubic yards of concrete. That means 50 concrete trucks were continuously circulating until 320 truckloads were poured. It was an astonishing operation. There were 2 major conveyors. There was a large pump that was doing all this work. I'll show you some pictures. There was a pretty substantial workforce that night, but a very skilled workforce finishing the concrete and seeing to the pouring of the concrete. And there was 175 to 180 tons of reinforcing steel that was involved in this slab pour. What we're talking about, So if you take a look at this area here, there's reinforcing steel there. The mud mat, the higher level of the medical mart, is to the left. So this area here is where this whole slab is going to be poured. What you see there, those are concrete pumps that are going to pump the concrete down. This is another view of it, so you can see how that reinforcing steel is all laid out. What's about to happen is concrete, a vast amount of concrete, is going to be poured on top of that rebar to create that whole setting. There's another view of it. This next view I like because what you can actually see here, if you look on the right, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 concrete trucks. They're all lined up, part of the 320 trucks that are coming in, dumping their concrete into these pumps. The concrete comes into that hole, and you have finishers finishing the concrete, and they're doing it all night long from midnight until the early hours of the morning. So that's the kind of operation that occurs, and sometimes people say to me, they look at the site one day and look at the next day, and they say, I don't remember that happening. When did that happen? Well, it happened at night when this could be done efficiently. So I thought you'd enjoy seeing just one example of an operation going on the project. Now, there's been a few things that have come up since I talked to you last time that have attracted some attention and some news, and let me review a few of these issues. One of the issues that, and by the way, the greeting I get from many of you now is, hi Jeff, how's the crack? Yeah. So I thought I would address the issue of the famous St. Clair Avenue crack. We all know that we did, since the last time I talked to you, a crack did appear on St. Clair Avenue. The crack was approximately 2 inches in width and various depth, and it did extend east and west along St. Clair Avenue. From the point this appeared until today, here's what has happened. There has been very extensive data collection and study. It has been going on. It's going to continue till the end of this week. And when you talk about study, there's been soil borings, inclinometers, tilt meters that try to measure movement, crack meters, ground penetrating radar to see the conditions down below, video of there's an existing sewer there to video it to see what evidence there is of this stuff. We expect that all of this study concludes this week. The experts take it. We're going to be seeing expert conclusions, we think, by the end of next week, because they're going to assemble and finalize their study of all this. We hope to know by the end of the following week, because what's going to happen is the expert opinion will come out. We're going to have to review it and look at it. It is our hope by the end of the following week that we will know at a minimum that we can open an additional lane and actually go from 1 lane to 2 lanes, so we'll have traffic both way on St. Clair Avenue. Right now, it's too early to determine the ultimate cause or competing causes of the crack. I'm not going to speculate, and everyone wants me to do that. I'm not going to speculate as to what caused the crack, because there could be competing causes or multiple causes. We're going to await the completion of the studies. We're going to do this in a very professional way, relying on studies, on expert opinion for this. I can tell you this piece of good news. There has been no impact on construction activities. We did make the determination very early on, within a few days after this occurred, that there was no material movement in the wall of the construction itself. There was no safety risk to those working in the vicinity of the wall, so that operations on the medical mart have continued unimpeded. So regardless of what this issue is, we don't foresee any large impact, cost impact, time impact to the medical mart project. We're going to have to wait and see what the issue is with respect to the street and possible repair of the street. But certainly, that is the scope of what this issue is, and that's the timing for resolution of the issue of the St. Clair crack. Let's talk a little bit now about contracting and staffing on the project. We've shown you the same timeline, but right now, what's important is we're into foundations now. As we complete foundations, you're going to see more grade beams, concrete pours, and basically this project, as you've been able to tell, it gets constructed as you would expect from the ground up. And so it's just one activity after the other as we move through. What's more interesting, though, and I've showed you this each month, is our manpower loading curve. The first month I reported to you in March, we had an average of about 145 men per day working on the site, man days, or man months, I should say. By May, it had ramped up to 185. Right now, we're up to about 234 people on site on an average day. So we're seeing 234 man months of labor or manpower for the project. We are still, this is the curve, the bell-shaped curve. We're still over here somewhere. Next summer, we're going to have double, actually more than double the amount of manpower we have right now. We're up to 234, but by the middle of next summer, we're going to have in excess of 580 people per day on that site, 580 plus whoever is involved in fit-out activities. So our base work will be 550. So it's going to grow and grow and grow until it gets to the top of that bell-shaped curve and then gradually go down the other way. But that's where we are right now. Safety, we still have an excellent safety record on the project. There was one accident resulting in some lost time. It was a relatively minor accident. We'd like to be at 0, but still only one accident where anyone missed a minute of time on the project is pretty good. It's actually very good right now. So it's a safe job. It's a well-managed job with respect to safety. I want to spend some time on the issue of economic inclusion. This, as those of you who have followed the project know, this has become a bit of a newsworthy issue in the last several weeks. I want to go through this and explain this. I want to present information to you as the council, and just so you understand exactly where we are, exactly what our positions are, and exactly what we're reporting. So, first of all, we have 3 goals on the project. These are goals that were there at the outset of the project. They were goals in the development agreement. They were goals that were there well before I came along, before any of us were involved with this project. And those goals are a small business enterprise goal of 25% of total contract value. And by the way, right now we're at 35%, so we have exceeded that goal. We're doing very, very well on that goal, which is a very important goal, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. We're at 35%. We have a county residency goal, the commitment that at least 40% of the workers on this project will be county residents. We have maintained our position above 50%. We're at 51% right now. City residency goal of 20%. We are at 24%. So we are doing very well with all of our stated goals. By the way, the most important issue on the SBE goal, there has always been the claim in the past that yes, there's SBE, small businesses working on the project, but they're always the same folks working for the same people. It's not like this is developing. I'm very proud of the fact that everybody on this project has worked extremely hard on that SBE goal, because 41 of the small business enterprise subcontractors are working for a prime contractor who's hired them for the first time. So there's new relationships, new working relationships. It's not business as usual. That is working very well. And in a couple minutes, I'm going to show you one of the impacts of maximizing SBE, because there's a goal we don't have on this project because legally we can't, but you're going to see what the impact of maximizing SBE does for that issue. Now, there has been, we have had requests for minority workforce data. We have had requests, and I'm going to go through these requests, to disclose, even though we have no goals with respect to either minority or, for that matter, gender workforce, we've been asked, nevertheless, to provide information about what's actually happening on the project. I want to go through this carefully because I want to explain the position we are taking, because we want to be transparent, we want to be helpful. There are some legal issues here, and I think that we have walked through this very carefully, but I think it's important for everyone to understand how we are treating this issue. So number one, I told you that we have goals that are SBE, local or city and county residence goals. The county has no goals on this project which are either race or gender based. And that is not because there was necessarily a policy decision at the time to have or not have those goals. It was because it was deemed to be illegal to have those goals. And the reason is that at the time the project came about, the county did not have, or at least it was the position of the county prosecutor's office, which has to be respected, that the county did not have a proper disparity study. Therefore, it would have been illegal to impose race or gender-based goals. So the goals that we could have were imposed. Now, that decision, and by the way, as you all know, you are looking as a new council at alternates, at solutions that you may have going forward, but we're talking about this project that pre-exists your determination of what you may do in the future about such matters. This fact has been completely respected by the city. When we had the early negotiations with the city on the definitive agreement, the question is, what are the goals, inclusion-related goals to the project? The city understood that the county could not, at present, have any race or gender-related goals. Therefore, the county agreed in the documents that we have with them to the goals that I have expressed. So the county has no attempted requirement that we have any race or gender-related goals for this project. They understand and respect our position in this. Nevertheless, there are elected officials who have requested minority workforce data. And these officials primarily are with BEDCO, but I've had several calls from several officials about this, and these calls have been polite. These calls have been for the purpose of seeking information. I don't think that there's any motive about this other than to truly understand what is happening on this project and what really does occur on a project like this with respect to workforce. Specifically, we've been asked to provide information about what is happening on the project, how many minorities are working on the project, can we tell them about who the SBEs are? Are they, by way of example, MBEs who are certified with somebody else? So let me say a couple things about this, particularly the workforce information. We do not require this information. It is not a project requirement or goal. It couldn't be legally. Nevertheless, the request is being made for data that we, in fact, do have access to. The reason for that is that this project has certified payroll records. The certified payroll records does collect information, workforce information. And in fact, you can look at certified payroll data and you can see self-reported information about race and gender. We don't audit it, but it's self-reported. So you can accumulate that information and you can issue or provide data. In addition to that, and by the way, we do have that data because certified payroll information is attached to payment applications that ultimately find their way to the county because it's an open book job. We require certified payroll information in order to confirm that this work has actually occurred on the project. It happens to have this other data with it. So the bottom line is we could look at it and we could provide this information. In addition to that, Turner Construction Company has biometric data. For their insurance and other programs, if you ever were a worker on the site, you'd find out that you put your finger into a machine, it checks your fingerprint, and by doing that, it knows immediately when you come on the project, when you come off the project, so it's very good data for insurance to know who's on the site, when they're on the site for understanding hours. It just so happens, though, that, by the way, every individual who filled out the data card, there was a place there for gender, there was a place there for race, so they have self-reported on these issues. Now, there's some limitations, potentially, to the accuracy of that, because, once again, someone could report other, and, there's no penalty for misreporting data on that card, but it's correlated, and it's believed that it's relatively accurate. In any event, the bottom line is the data exists. We've been asked to provide it. While we have no legal obligation to do so, this county has been about transparency. This is data. This is information. And we feel that in the interest of full transparency, we have the information. Frankly, it could be obtained from us in a Public Records Act request, but that's not our motivation. It's information about the project. We want to be transparent. We have agreed to assemble and provide this information. It doesn't mean that we are now going to assert goals that would be illegal to assert. It doesn't mean that we are going to change contractual obligations. We're simply going to factually report what is occurring on the project. And if you have questions about this when I get done, I want to make sure that you ask them, because this is we have to understand what we're doing here. We're balancing the issue of transparency with the issue of what our legal obligations are. So here's what we've agreed to provide today. Number one, and by the way, this we would have provided anyway, a breakdown of the SBE data. We're going to identify all of the SBE, Small Business Enterprise Contractors, and post that on the county website. And you can't read this yet because it's too small. This is why I love our small screens when I do this. But let me tell you what this shows, and this will be on the county website as soon as we can get it up there. What this actually shows is it shows every prime contractor, it shows all of their SBE commitments, and it shows the names by prime contractor of the small business enterprises who have in fact come onto the project. And by the way, this information, to the extent that the city or anybody else wants to find out which of these companies are MBEs certified in their cities, you can certainly do that. The name, the address of the parties are there. And this correlates to the number I showed you before, around 34, 35% SBE versus our 25% goal. So it's all there. A second thing we've agreed to provide is a breakdown of cumulative work hours by jurisdiction, and that means city or county, but also we've agreed to provide data as to minority and gender. This next document, by the way, and you might be able to read this, but I doubt it, watching you squint, this is the report that is going to be up on the website. And let me tell you what this shows. This shows every prime contractor on the project. It shows total workforce hours by prime contractor. As of the date of this report, there's 138,000 hours which have been worked on the project. It shows you on the right-hand side how many of those hours are by City of Cleveland residents. That's 33,000 hours. That's 24%. It shows you how many hours are by county residents, 70,000 hours, or 51%. It shows you the number of hours by minorities on the workforce. And that is approximately 26,597 hours. That is 19%. You may have seen that 19% number flashed a few times. Well, this is where it comes from. It is 19%. That's the fact. And by the way, there's 6,200 hours of female participation on the site. That is approximately 4%. So those are the numbers. We're not hiding anything. That's exactly what's happening on our work site. Okay? Now, let me tell you one important relationship on this project. We have been working very, very hard on maximizing small business enterprise. And let me make this observation for you. There is a direct correlation between SBE participation and meeting our jurisdictional workforce goals and minority and female workforce results. In other words, what I'm saying is we have goals that are jurisdictional workforce. The more you do with SBE, the better your results. And it just so happens that the better you do with SBE, the greater the number of minority and females working on the project. All right? Not that it's a goal, it's a fact. All right? And let me show you probably the most critical piece of data, and this will be on the website as well. This shows you the total, I have to be by the microphone. This shows you the total workforce hours on the project worked by SBEs. And what you're going to see on that, so that's 24,000 hours. Of the hours worked by small business enterprises, 54% of those hours are by minority workforce. So the percentage of minorities working for SBEs is far higher than perhaps larger out-of-town companies that come in. Our small business enterprises maximize minority participation. They maximize local participation. City of Cleveland, 48% of the work hours for SBEs. Much, much higher. You know, we had good numbers before. These are very good numbers. Cuyahoga County, of the hours worked by SBEs, 70% reside within Cuyahoga County. And by the way, for females, 10%. The bottom line is, as you can see, if we push those goals that we can legally push, which is SBE, we can not only increase City of Cleveland and county participation, we do increase minority and female on-site workforce participation, which leads me to the fact that throughout this project, there has been an extraordinary effort made to increase SBE participation. You saw those numbers of the new participants doing it. These are the SBE goals that were created for the project. I'm going to let you look at this at your convenience, but the actions are really important. The actions are MMPI has retained coordination and outreach help. They have just had countless meetings, countless get-togethers, countless workshops, bringing SBEs in, getting them to get new mentor-mentee relationships or new relationships with larger contractors. They've had outreach events with respect to all of the various community action groups for this purpose. They've been printing newsletters, bilingual newsletters that have gone out, announced opportunities, announced outreach events, announced these workshops. And there's just, and I've reported on this in past meetings, by the way, but I just want to emphasize the importance of all this activity. So there's been a tremendous amount of activity to increase this SBE participation. And an extraordinary number of both prime contractors and SBEs are showing up for these events, and that's why we're having such success growing the SBE component of the project, which is an important thing for us to do. Keep in mind what's going on right now. We are, suddenly, from not a lot going on, we are competing. You saw the newspaper article about $5 billion worth of work in the greater Cleveland area, whether you're talking about the casino, whether you're talking about MoCA's new museum or Flat Seas, all these projects, every one of them is competing for the same workforce and to maximize these goals. So it's very, very important that we do these things because, frankly, the issue is, can we get the supply to meet the demand? And let me talk about supply. One of the issues that needs to be worked on, and it's well beyond the scope of this project, is what to do to increase workforce. Whether you're talking about small businesses and their workforce, whether you're talking about minority and female workforce, that's an issue. And we're not going to get into the issues here of unions, their training programs, apprenticeship, et cetera. That's a bigger issue than we have time to talk about today. But we do have programs in this project that are special hiring programs. And I just want to point out to you that in our agreements, both with the city and MMPI, we have set up a series of training programs and operational workforce training programs. And there's 6 different things that we're actually doing that I'm not sure that everyone is aware of. And these are the 6 things, and I'm going to go through them very quickly. We have a USIP ASAP program. This is a union apprenticeship training program. This is conducted out of Max Hayes High School. They basically take 25 kids in the class as they work toward their degrees. They also are entered into a pre-apprenticeship program so they can work with trades. Of that class of 25, our project is sponsoring 5 of those kids. So we're sponsoring 20% of that class. We have already, and we have commitments for when they graduate, that they're going to be teamed up with various subcontractors, mechanical, concrete, plumbing, electrical, et cetera. These are skilled trades, and we're going to get these kids into these apprenticeship programs. We actually, through MMPI, as part of our commitment with them, and through Turner, they're funding the program, they're funding the training, they're getting these kids trained, and they're committed to give these kids, and these are all minority students, give them jobs on the project. Through CMSD, through our Cleveland high school intern program, we have 15 to 25 high school students who will work as interns on the project through 2013. 5 of these young people have been employed as interns since February 2011. They're selected from the, by the way, I did this the last minute. Someone on PowerPoint has to tell me how to do squared. It says MC2, it's MC squared STEM school. That's where the kids are coming from, and so we have this very active school intern program. There's also a Cleveland Metropolitan School District college scholarship program. Turner's selecting 1 CMSD graduate attending college in a construction-related curriculum in 2012 and 2013. There's a $5,000 scholarship. and they're going to be issuing scholarships in 2012 and 2013 for people who will then work in connection with the project. We have career awareness for the middle schools. This really consists of a series of organizations going out, doing presentations, teaching kids about construction and job opportunities and career opportunities, and doing training on an outreach basis. We also participate in a co-op program. There's a graduate from Jane Addams right now who's currently attending Cleveland State, who is interning with respect to MMPI, and that's part of a program that we have as well. In addition to all of the stuff we're doing for construction phase training, MMPI, by agreement with us, is required, and by the way, delighted to become involved with an operational training program with Tri-C, where they're going to be training young students, minority students, who are then going to get involved in the operational phase of the project. There's a lot of detail to this. You have a printout which is 22 pages in length. It goes through these programs in great detail. We have been asked to make a presentation to the city in one of their council meetings to really describe how we're meeting all of these training initiatives. On August 3rd, I think I'm going to be going over with a couple people from MMPI to do the detailed presentation of all this. We can spend as much time with you on this as you like, or you can read it over and ask questions later. But I wanted to tell you that we're very committed to these programs, and I will tell you that I believe that MMPI and Turner and everybody else has gone above and beyond the call of duty for what was called for. This is a serious matter, and it's something that everyone is doing and very, very engaged in, and it's working quite well. At this point in time, what I'm going to do is, we have some folks here from MMPI. Everyone has been very anxious to know what's going on with the business plan. We know that a few weeks ago, Chris Kennedy stepped down as the CEO, so we thought it was important to show you the continuity, what's going on, and really tell you about some developments, because the question you all have is, where do we stand on the lease-up? Where do we stand on getting tenants? Where do we stand on getting shows? So what I'm going to do is introduce a few folks from MMPI. They're going to make a very brief presentation about where they stand, and then I'll take any questions either about what I've presented, or we'll take questions about what they presented. So Brian, first of all, Myron Maurer is here. Myron recently received a promotion. Your new title is Chief Operating Officer of MMPI, so he's the #2 guy in charge. But he's the person who, frankly, I've, from the beginning, have worked with probably the most closely on business-related issues. So it really doesn't matter how high up he moves on the food chain. He's going to be completely committed and available for our project. Brian Casey, who's the general manager here in Cleveland for the Medical Mart project, is going to make a brief presentation.
Good afternoon.
And it is still on the PowerPoint.
There it is.
Okay.
I think when I first met you, I was very new to town. Now I'm relatively new to town. So I think when I get into this presentation, I don't want to make any assumptions. You know, I thought it would be good to start out and give you kind of an overview of kind of who MMPI is, and then get into who I am and then where we are on the project. You know, as you know, Vornado is one of the largest real estate investment trusts in the country, and MMPI's division is the largest Mart manager in the world. Now you can see all these buildings that we own and we operate in, but I think the important thing is that while we're coast to coast in what we're doing, this is the most important slide, because this reflects the amount of business that we're representing. And this is something that over the years has not been stagnant, it's been growing. And it's been a result of the depth of talent that's been in the MMPI organization. And I think that the other point that I want to make too is that the experience in launching and growing events has been a key part of what we are as a company. Now myself, I have over 30 years experience in the convention and trade show industry. I came here after spending 5 years in High Point, at the High Point market, which I was CEO of the High Point Market Authority there. And we oversaw 12 million square feet of permanent showroom space, attracting about 160,000 people annually. The city of High Point thought highly enough of me to give me a key to the city, when I left, and the governor was kind enough to send me a letter thanking me for the 5 years of contribution that I had there. Prior to that, I worked for Smith Buckland and Associates, which is the largest association management company in the country, if not the world, and I managed an 80-person division that focused on trade shows and conventions in medical, IT, and manufacturing industries. And we were very involved in not only growing the shows on behalf of the clients that we worked on, but we launched new shows and successfully did that to build those on behalf of the clients that we worked with. I've worked in advisory capacity for Chicago, Phoenix, and Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau, advisory council for GES exhibitions. GES, if you're not familiar with them, is one of the 2 largest trade show service contractors in the country. Firms like this handle the coordination of freight in and out convention centers. They work across the country and in some cases around the world. And so I was fortunate enough to work in an advisory capacity with them, but have relationships with both Freeman Decorating and most of the other major service contractors that are out there. I served as an advisory, as a customer advisory with a group of people that were users of the McCormick Place complex during some of their early expansion programs, so I had an opportunity to get some experience and exposure in that. And when I was in High Point, North Carolina, I crossed the line of not just show management, but economic development work that was being done. And in my mind, that's a critical component of what we did in North Carolina and a critical component of what I'm here to do right now, because while we want to make this a successful event, I want to spread my tentacles into helping Cleveland become a stronger town, because in the end, the stronger the attraction of the city of Cleveland becomes, the easier it's going to be for us to attract more conventions and make this successful, and possibly even see some expansion on what we're doing. And then finally, I served on the Center of Exhibition Industry Research Board of Directors. It's a group that is a not-for-profit group that does studies benchmarking that benefits the trade show industry. So currently where we stand is we have 65 letters of intent that represents about 134,000, almost 135,000 square feet of space. And with the current building capacity, you can see that, well, this has been part of our strategy all along, which is to kind of build up a strong enough case with LOIs in the mix of tenants here that represent hospitals, educational institutions, medical device companies, healthcare information technology, all core niches that can support one another in terms of target audiences, but most importantly, leverage the demographic component of what we have as a community here, not just in Cleveland, but in the region of Northeast Ohio. We're currently in phase 1 of converting LOIs to contracts, and this is not an unusual approach. So we're taking the first highly regarded set of customers that we want to convert, and we have contracts in their hands. So it's currently under legal review, and as those get converted to full-blown leases, we'll be alerting you as to who they are, because I think that what will happen is, and the reason why we do this is that it will begin to give us momentum, and it will be able to give us also an ability to adjust our strategy as we move forward, because with any new show launch, when you're dealing with industries and markets, they're not stagnant. They're constantly changing. There's companies that could be going through acquisitions or being acquired by others. And so we want to be careful not only in who we place in here, that they're the proper mix, but they're the proper players. And we may find as we get further down the road that we're able to strengthen that offering to gain even some larger players into the building as well. So we're in a very good position as it relates to this. And as I mentioned, what we're going to be doing is leveraging the strength of the region and the industry cluster that exists here, which is so strong, and it's going to be the key differentiator for us for a lot of the convention business that we bring into town. We've also been very engaged in the industry as well. We've been talking to top level of individuals with many of these organizations, everybody from Beju Shah, of course Toby Cosgrove, but deep into his organization, UH, and many of these other organizations. And we've been providing them feedback on the direction that we're going with this and getting good validation from them as well as good direction. And we continue to consult with them on this because it is a complicated thing that we're undertaking here. And the fact of the matter is we want them in lockstep, and every single one of these organizations is passionate about wanting to see this thing successful. So that's a very good situation to be in. As it relates to the convention business, we've booked 39 conventions to date. 14 of them have contracts in place. 25 LOIs. Some of those, LOIs get extended out a little bit further, so that's going to be a natural way that people work on these processes. But we've also been accessing not only healthcare leadership to generate activity, but Councilman Schron has been helpful with us and working with the Positively Cleveland group and us to bring potentially significant piece of business here. When we worked with these organizations that sit on boards that help to drive decisions on where their conventions are going to go and help us to deliver the message that Cleveland may not be what you thought it was at one point in time, but a very changing and different place. We all know that the convention center was relatively dilapidated. We have a brand new Cleveland right now. And so we are going to be adding another full-time equivalent to our staff, because what, in my mind, we need to have somebody focusing primarily only on the medical related business as part of our strategy. And now is the time to be doing that, as we've been now getting shovels in the ground, because many meeting planners are not going to make decisions until they start to see some of those things happen. And so as this activity, steel starts going up, we're going to be able to see more activity as it relates to that. But I want you to also know that, we're not standing or working alone in this. And I've worked in a lot of cities where I see the Convention and Visitors Bureaus and the buildings at odds with one another. They're not in lockstep. And one of the first things I did was to reach out to David Gilbert, and I'm finding that he and I are in definite lockstep with one another. I suggested to him, and he agreed, that what we would do is institute weekly sales meetings so we can compare notes on activity that's coming in. Councilman Schron's group was with Positively Cleveland. They were quick to build us into meetings with the paid leadership of that group to come in and pitch them on this, and we're going to continue to be in lockstep in working on making that happen. I've asked David Gilbert if we could have monthly meetings, because I think that our level of communication has to be at a high level. And I've been told that I'm going to be offered a board position, and I think that this is going to be critical for us. But I also think that we need to go deeper into the community with the other assets that we have. I've been invited to be on the board of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and met with Terry Stewart, and he and I have discussed the fact that we need to be meeting with the Browns, the Cleveland Indians, the Cavaliers, and there's a plethora of other offerings that we need to build into this, because every convention that may come to town may have different levels of interest, and we can develop more concerted packages for them that fit the behaviors of the groups that would be coming in here. So this has been a very important component, because we don't want to step on the sales process of what they're happening. We want to complement each other in the things that we're doing. And so at the same time, we're going to other trade shows together. We're conveying the message. We're going to be talking about some more cooperative branding with the things that we've developed with our marketing materials, and try to help one another. So I'm very pleased with this relationship, and very excited about the direction things are going at this point in time. So I guess that concludes my brief presentation and update. And I guess, should I open it up for questions, or?
Well, let me do this, because there may be questions for you or for me, and I know you have other business today. So I'll stand up here and we can see if there are questions that either one of us can answer for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Applebaum and Mr. Casey, for the presentations. I had a few questions regarding the early part of the presentation. I've got 5, actually. The low-hanging fruit are all of the interns paid?
I'm going to actually turn some of these more specific questions over to MMPI, because you have more of the detail than I do. The questions are all the interns paid. Maybe you could just answer yes or no.
Yes. Great.
I'm happy with that answer. Thank you. Yes.
And do we have an idea of what the cost is of sponsoring the UCIP students, the 5 students?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have those contracts. I think it's in the material you have there, but Dave, do you recall what the cost of the?
It's in the
Well, it's in the materials you have, and do you have a set? You can look it up. Dave will look it up in your materials while you ask the next question. It's in there. I can't remember the precise number, but the numbers are in there. And as a matter of fact, what you'll see is that there's the contract to do that work, and you'll also see the individual commitments of the contractors who take on those roles, and the numbers are in there. But we'll look those up. I can't remember the precise numbers. I'm sorry. You have it?
I don't have the numbers in this package.
Well, we'll get you the numbers.
5 contracts that I believe turned over.
We'll submit to council those numbers. I actually think it's in the material that will be posted on the website, but I'll make sure you have that information. I just don't have the precise numbers with me.
Great. Yeah, I didn't see it in here. Can you talk a little bit about how the goals that were presented, specifically I'm looking at the county residence goal. When I first saw this about a year ago or so, I thought 40% was awfully low for that project. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the thinking and the rationale behind creating and developing a goal for participation.
That is a very good question, and I must tell you that of my own knowledge, I can't. Those goals, that particular aspect of this deal was in place and in the agreement at the time of the letter of intent and the development agreement, which, as you may know, was already in place prior to the time that I got on the project. And while I had a lot of ability to deal with design, construction, and process issues, some of those fundamental deal points as established by the county, I don't have knowledge. Now, I guess, Myron, do you? You were there before me.
I don't have personal knowledge.
It just seems odd that we would start a project with the idea in mind that 60% of the workers on that project will be from outside of Cuyahoga County.
You know, unfortunately, Councilman, I can't help you with that, but what we will endeavor to do, I'll do some, you know, it's a historical fact. It was a matter of contract. So, you know, from a historical point of view and a policy point of view, it's obviously important for you to know as you think about policy going forward. With respect to this project, it was already, you know, cast in stone. It was already a feature of the project. So not something I could have, that I had any, you know, basis to go back and modify. But we'll inquire, and I'll find out who it is that has that knowledge, and we'll see if we can't get some information to you. I think it's something you probably want to think about as you get into some of the other legislation you're thinking about as to goals as you move forward, whether it's equity legislation or similar matters. So I think for purposes of that, we'll try to get that information to you. I unfortunately just don't have it.
Okay. The 19% minority number, are females included in that 19%?
If they are, yes. In other words, you can be a minority. The fact that you are a female does not make you a minority. So you can be a female included in the gender number. You can be an African American female in the gender number or in the minority number.
But it's not. So the 4% females aren't considered minorities, is what I'm getting at.
No.
Okay.
You have race-related categories and gender-related categories.
Okay. And are there further disaggregated numbers for the 19% as far as?
A request has been made that we provide further information. And by that, you know, classically, you can take a minority, the minority number, and the classic, I think the federal breakdown is into 5 categories, which include African American, Hispanic, et cetera. And here is the situation with respect to that. Although there is no information that the county has that reliably would tell you that, there is information in the biometric data that Turner has that breakdown. We have agreed that to the extent that that is available, we have agreed, and I see the councilman here from the city, and we've reached agreement with representatives of BEDCO, including Councilman Johnson is here, and we have agreed to obtain that information. Once again, it's information. If we have it, we're going to provide it. The one thing I want to caution people about that information is it's self-authenticating. In other words, it's not audited. And the other issue is, and I actually found this out as I got into this a little bit, there is a category called Other. So, in other words, you may freely indicate that you are a minority, but if you are asked the question of whether you are African American or Hispanic, you may choose not to indicate that, or you may check Other. By way of example, you may be mixed. You may object to answering the question. There's a lot of reasons people would choose Other. So there's a possibility that the data will underreport or not accurately report, but once again, the information is what it is. With that understood, we'll provide it, and those who get it will make out of it, whatever they can. But we're going to provide the information because in the spirit of transparency, we have it. It's not audited, but it is what it is, and we'll provide it.
Do we know how soon that'll?
We know that the information, all the information that I have promised, with the exception of that breakdown, well, actually, some of it's going to go up right now. All of the minority information that has not been broken down further, we're going to provide immediately. We found out that there is some work that has to be done. The biometric program, there's some cost and there's some work that has to be done that we didn't realize to get that done. We've asked that that be done immediately. I don't think it's going to be a very long delay. And by the way, we've also asked, because we know we'll have the request, we've entered into an agreement that not only do we get it, but we get it monthly. Because I'm sure if we provide it 1 month, it's not going to, people are going to want to monitor it. So we're getting that work done, but I think it'll be a matter of a very short period of time when this is all available.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thanks. Mr. Applebaum, I assume there's going to be lights on that path too? That taking down to the football game, there'll be lights for our evening games that when they...
I would assume so.
I didn't hear it, but I just assumed that somebody will take that in consideration for slips and falls.
I'm quite sure that if they haven't figured that out yet, they will.
It scares me.
I assume it'll be lit, and I mean, there's a responsibility here to secure it, to maintain it, to make it safe. So I think we can assume that all those issues are going to be properly taken care of.
Can I assume
contract.
on the 40% that there are some special expertise required to build a building of this nature that maybe isn't resonant within our county, and you have to bring experts in from other areas to do things like the concrete lintels and stuff like that you're talking about? Or is that a expectation that you would not have all the expertise, seeing how the last convention center we built here was what?
Oh, there's quite a bit of expertise that we're not going to find in Cuyahoga County, and that's very limited. Of course, that's one of the reasons why we encourage some of the companies from out of town who have this expertise to team up with small business enterprises in town who might be able to take a piece of it and learn. There's some historical trades that, and I don't want to beat up on these people because they've done better here. So if I say who they are, then it's not fair. There are some trades that historically have not done a good job of having small businesses and local businesses team up with them. On this particular project, they have, for the first time, that's some of those new relationships. So we think we're seeing a lot of success in getting some of those historical trades that have no work in town, or we have no expertise in town, where they're teaming up with local players.
Because we're constantly referring to this is a region. I assume that somebody's probably going to make a logical request about how many of the rest of that group are coming from Lake County and Lorain County and Summit County, which probably have all contributed to the tax base that's helped build this base by transactions, because it's tax-based activity from the sales tax side. So that's probably the next request that's going to come down the road, is what's contributing to the region out there.
Thank you, Councilman, for suggesting that. So now I have to think about the next.
Well, I'm just giving you a thought to think about, because my assumption is everybody thinks regional nowadays in our area. So I just would assume that's.
Well, and if we get that request, we'll have to deal with it.
Right. On the SBE goal, when it was set down, did you anticipate that over 50% would be coming in, which is a fact you found out, from the MBE, as the data just showed that.
Minority, we're talking workforce here, minority workforce.
Right, and the minority workforce, that 50% of your SBE would be a minority workforce? I mean, that seems to me that was not something you would have factored in at the very beginning, but it's a surprising
I don't know
information.
that we were that specific about it, but if you think about it logically, I mean, more of your smaller businesses, let me say it this way. A small business from Indiana is not going to come to do this project. The large businesses are from out of town. They have no reason. Small businesses from out of town are not going to be here. A higher concentration of the small businesses will be in town. A higher, and the smaller businesses in town are going to have a higher resident population from Cleveland and Cuyahoga County. And for that matter, because of our makeup here, they're going to have a higher percentage of minorities working. So, while I never thought about it in terms of numbers, I guess it is foreseeable that if you increase the SBE population, you are increasing your residence goals, and it's having the effect of increasing the opportunities for minority workforce. By the way, I don't know, I haven't thought about this with respect to female workforce. Because I don't know that Cleveland has a higher percentage of women to men than outlying areas, but certainly it works with respect to minority workforce.
50% was something I was.
It's an interesting
significant
number.
impact out there.
And it also tells us, by the way, that our efforts to increase SBEs has a lot of good results, and we're going to continue to do that.
And this is just for a couple of questions for Mr. Casey, if at all possible. You indicated that you had a mix of, I think, 5 categories. Do you have that broken down as far as it had hospitals and it had, I assume you do, medical device and things of that nature? Because some of those categories have the potential to drive follow-on jobs, maybe at a higher percentage than others would. For example, the medical device, if they are committed to the medical mart, is a real good possibility. We could try to draw them in for later putting a call center or a manufacturing center or something of that nature, whereas.
I mean, absolutely. I found that, the relationships that you build through those types of things, particularly if they're not from the area, gives you an opportunity to leverage that to somehow get them exposed to and convince them potential either part of their business or some of their business here.
Could we see a breakdown of that? Because to me, that's the next follow-on job driver as far as how that mix shakes out, as far as whether there's a potential.
We can get you the list of LOIs with kind of the category.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. And did I understand that the data shows that you're 100% committed? If everybody signs their LOI and converts it to a contract, we're actually sold out already on the space, just about? We're actually oversold at this point. That's a great problem to have for you. And you indicated you had 39 conventions. What does our pool of leads look like?
It's changing every day, and I don't have that number available right now, but like I say, through Positively Cleveland and what we're working through. For instance, I had a meeting just the other day with Freeman Decorating. They do a considerable amount of business and they've been willing to share their list of contacts with us so that we can use that as a process. I don't have that exact number for you, but I can get that if you want.
Okay, it seems to me if 39 is committed, we should have almost a multiple of 3 or 4 leads to everyone.
The lists are extensive.
Yeah.
I mean, what's been built over the last year and a half has been, I think, a pretty impressive, database. And I think much of that has been through relationships of trade shows that we've participated in, list acquisitions that we've undertaken, and much of it has been focused on the medical sector that fits with the model of the convention center that we're building.
Madam President, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chairperson.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Applebaum, I had the opportunity to attend a Cleveland City Council committee meeting, and I'd like you to give me a little bit of the history first of this is obviously a county project, but the history of the City of Cleveland relationship early on in the agreement and understandings that were provided at that time. How did that come about?
I pick up the trail at a point in time. So there were some understandings that pre-existed my involvement. In particular, the understanding with respect to the inclusion issues, that conversation really did take place a little bit before me. Now, I got involved heavily with the city of Cleveland. And by the way, just to be very clear, I was actually not going to do in fact, I was not supposed to be doing the original real estate deal with the city of Cleveland or any of the real estate deals. I sort of started on the project, and the next thing I know, I was doing that. There was actually another law firm involved with that. But I got involved early on with the what's referred to as the definitive agreement. There was basically a letter of intent, but then a definitive agreement, and this really had to do with the purchase, because this all ties into the purchase of the property. These are all conditions that go along with the purchase of the property. So, you know, the question is, why is it or how is it that the city has the ability to, I wouldn't say, to negotiate terms with us? You know, it's our project. While we want to be helpful to the city, why does the city have leverage? And the reason, of course, the city had leverage is because we were buying the property from the city. But I have to tell you that in connection with, if you're asking this question precisely with respect to the inclusion goals, and I don't know if you are or not.
I do have questions, but
Yeah, but I will tell you that in those conversations, that was a given. That was sort of a predetermined issue. When we got into it, that was in fact the county's position. The city respected that position, and that was not the subject of any renegotiation. That was not the subject of any discussion other than those are in fact the goals. What we did negotiate with the city, by the way, everything you heard that had to do with training, the internship program, all of those numbers, those were in fact negotiated with the city, because keep in mind, any obligation that we as the county agreed to take on, I had to make sure that we were in a position to implement. And my implementers are sitting over there, and their implementers are actually the design builder and the contractors. So I had to make sure that whatever we agreed to take on, we had the ability to implement those obligations. I mean, you know, we as the county say we're going to achieve these goals, and that's a commitment we also make to the city. And I have to make sure that in all of our agreements that we require everyone that works with us to get to those goals. But we never, you know, the negotiation of those numbers, of those goals, specifically the 25, 40, 20, that was, I can't go back further in history than when I started, so I don't know.
Okay. Mrs. Arlene Anderson from Minority Business Solutions. It's safe to say she is one of your implementers also? Is she the one that is driving the minority numbers as we target the SBE goals?
Arlene Anderson is in a joint venture. Her company is MBS. We, the county, do not have a contract with Arlene Anderson. We have a contract with MMPI. We require MMPI not only to work towards achieving these goals, but we require them to undertake a monitoring function, and there's a series of things they have to do. MMPI went through a process to select a monitoring consultant and consultants to do other activities. As part of that, they selected a joint venture that consisted of MBS and another company. MBS was more focused on the African American inclusion, the other company more focused on Hispanic inclusion. I don't know if you want to make any comments about your selection of Arlene Anderson, or I don't know if you have specific questions about that, but that's really directed to MMPI.
I can help. What's the specific question?
Basically, my question is, one, is she here, or could she attend these meetings and give us some insight into what she's doing? The sense I get is that our goals are SBE targeted, but I was under the impression that she, as a Minority Business Solutions organization, was tasked with providing minority contractors. Or
She's hired
is
for,
that-
the exact title of her position is Monitoring Compliance and Outreach Coordinator. It's a joint venture between Minority Business Solutions and North Coast Minority Media. Arlene's the president of MBS, Lou Acosta is the president of North Coast Minority Media. So they actually have 19 different tasks, and I would be happy to supply exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Some of the functions are monitoring and compliance. As you get into the actual construction of the project, a great deal of their time is spent monitoring to make sure that the reports that we're given, that the contracts that are signed between the prime contractors and the SBE contractors are in fact real, that people are doing the job, that they're getting paid. They're currently doing things like monitoring certified payroll. The second thing is what I'd call community outreach. Is not only identifying potential SBE contractors, but making sure the information reaches as many potential SBE contractors that could qualify to work on this project as possible. And by qualify, I mean that they're Cuyahoga County certified, or they're in the process of attempting to become Cuyahoga County certified. We held 2 certification workshops. In fact, I saw Lenore Lockett and Nancy Mercado here from the county Office of Diversity. They worked with us on 2 certification workshops that we held prior to construction. So that's one of the other tasks. So
her job actually is not to connect you with subcontractors, but to monitor.
Well, again, that's one aspect of her job. Monitoring and compliance is one aspect of the job. One is to make sure that the information reaches SB contractors that could potentially work on the project as well. Ms. Anderson's firm, along with North Coast Minority Media, do sit in on all the meetings with the prime contractors. So, for example, if I'm a prime contractor that have a difficulty finding SB subcontractors, they do have a pool of SB contractors that are available by category. But I'd also point out that the outreach events that you host are also intended to bring people to the table. The January outreach event in particular, with more than 180 potential SB subcontractors meeting with primes, you call it what you will. Different companies call those matchmaker events or whatever. But the idea there is to make sure that the information gets out and that people actually attend the events. And that's something that's been very important, is not only get the word out, but make sure people actually go to the event, they understand who they're going to be meeting with, that they understand what materials they need to bring with them, so that they can actually set an appointment, have the appointment, and potentially be hired. As Mr. Applebaum pointed out, one of the points of emphasis for our company as part of SBE Outreach is creating first-time opportunities, so that the same companies aren't being hired by the same prime contractors, that we're trying to create new opportunities. And roughly a third of the SBE subcontractors working on the job right now, or under contract to work on the job right now, are first-time opportunity companies.
One thing I want to be clear about, and this once again, we're getting into the legal side of this. The work that MBS is doing is to maximize SBE, is to help the SBE goal. Now, obviously, there are a lot of minority business enterprises that are SBEs, and it's important for her to get into the minority community to maximize minority businesses who are SBEs. But from the county's point of view, we're maximizing SBE, the SBE goal. One way to do that, of course, is to have as many MBEs and FBEs who happen to also be SBEs. But we have to be very careful about, how we describe that goal. And I'll take my lawyer hat back off and we can keep talking.
Again, in the monitoring role, and this is for education so that I can understand, the certified payroll seems to be a strong way of determining who's on the project, what they make, their racial identity, and all of these other issues. Who monitors? Is it done in-house? Is there an outside entity that does it? Is MBS play a part in that? Talk a little bit about that for me.
I'm going to caution you about where you're going, though, because, with respect to certified payroll, there are, from the point of view of our goals, there's various things that we obviously are, that we have certified payroll for. We have certified payroll to ensure that the work has been performed, that the hours as reported are accurate, that, it has a role with respect to prevailing wage, obviously, because you see the wage payment. You see something about the address, and of course, from that, we can determine how we're doing on, and there's actually some monitoring done of residency. Right now, because the county does not have and cannot have a race or gender-related goal, while the certified payroll provides information, self-reported information about whether someone is a minority or gender, that there's no specific task to audit the accuracy of that, because there can't be. Now, I will also tell you that there are situations where that information may or may not be accurate, and I'll even tell you there's some situations where some of that, for some companies, was not filled out. So it's the best information we have. It's the information that is available. We've agreed to make it available, but we don't vouch for the accuracy of that self-reported data. It is the information we have. We're transparent. We're going to make it available. If the county, at some point in time, establishes goals, if you should do this, that are race or gender-based, and we have goals, and we have enforcement around those goals, then I'm sure in the future there may be a different approach taken to this. But for this project, for any county project right now, there are no race or gender-related workforce goals.
And I understand that there are no goals. It didn't seem to be a problem to talk about where we are.
There's no problem talking about where we are, but the data and information is what it is. That's all I can say.
My last question is in regards to the graduating students. Turner Construction Company was to select one and provide a $5,000 scholarship toward their education in 2011 and in 2012. Have they done that yet for 2011?
Yes. They have, I believe they have for 2011, correct?
They have not.
Oh, I'm sorry. They have.
No.
The other answer is correct. They have not.
No, the question you're asking is specific to the college graduation program. Turner has taken in a series of interns from the MC Squared STEM school, which is only in its 4th year of existence. Those students are primarily in a construction-based curriculum. Turner has indicated their intention is to begin issuing scholarships in 2012 and 2013 in order to meet with the first graduating class that's coming out of the MC Squared STEM High School. So that's the best information I have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher?
Mr. Applebaum, is the internship exclusive to the City of Cleveland School District?
I believe, and once again, I have to tell you, I'm not the expert on these issues, but, and Dave, you have to keep looking up. I believe that that internship was set up with the Cleveland schools, correct?
Yeah. Councilman Gallagher, I can speak to that as well. If you look at section 18.19.3, it specifically states that our special hiring practices are supposed to be geared towards working with, and it just says school district. So the assumption there is, since the contract is between buyer and seller, which is county and city, that we take that to mean the Cleveland Municipal School District.
You've refreshed my recollection. It is specific to the Cleveland School District.
So here we are talking about inclusion, but that's exclusive. And 70+% of the people in this county live in the outer ring suburbs and the inner ring suburbs. and they're excluded. So when we're talking about inclusion going forward, I know you can't do anything about it now, I would think that we have to look at everybody, especially those that own the property now going forward. I would think that would be our charge, but I found it interesting, we're talking about inclusion, and we find out that a good portion of the students in Cuyahoga County are excluded. Our
negotiating partner on those issues, by the way, happened to be the city of Cleveland. So
speaking of the negotiating partner, the city of Cleveland, the park on top, has the city of Cleveland stepped up yet?
I can tell you informally that we believe that we are going to be able to present an agreement to you where the city and MMPI will step up. We are working toward a document that we will put in front of you, and I am informed that we will have an agreement. It's a little premature yet.
More than grass and trees? I'll tell you what, we'll get into
Let me
that
rephrase it. The agreement I'm referring to is the agreement to fund this first stage of design. So, you know, what I'm telling you is more limited than what you're asking me about.
You were a little concerned last time about having to know if there's going to be fountains because you had to know pretty soon as far as going forward with the plumbing and whatnot.
Right.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, what we're talking about is this. The solution is that we have to build that into our planning right now. So the agreement that we need right now, and that I do not foresee a problem with, by the way, is an agreement to get some engineering and design done. I think that we're going to be presenting something to three parties. County's a party, MMPI is a party, the city's a party. We've had informal conversation about this. That is not where we're going to get the design done now that we need to preserve these opportunities so that we're not going to go beyond a phase in the project that is a point of no return. So we're going to have enough design done so that we can incorporate it. And I think we're going to have that actually probably by the next time I come before you. That will be something that you'll either have looked at or that you'll know about. Now, whether or not parties come forward based on those designs and finance the actual physical infrastructure, you know, that's the role of this group plan commission to see if they have, they can raise the money. And that I have no comment about.
We'll talk next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applebaum, these current compliance with SBE, the project's 14% done. These numbers are based on what percentage of the project? You know, and I'm thinking in terms of what's been done has been heavy foundation and so on. I'm thinking that this may change quite a bit when you get into the actual design and so on.
It's a very good question, and there's actually two types of curves we should be looking at, because there's a workforce curve. Now, the workforce reflects the work that's actually going on out there on the site. So by way of example, I can tell you that this does not reflect the labor that will be involved in placing elevators, because we have no labor yet on placing elevators. So with the workforce, you are absolutely correct. You know, this is a snapshot in time that is subject to change. Now I'm going to talk about some of the factors that will make that change in a second. It's slightly different on the SBE side, because the SBE side represents committed contract values. So as you'll see, if you could have read the chart, but when I give you the chart, you're going to find out that there are contractors who, you may have a contractor who enters into a contract now for work which he commits over the next several months. He's entered into his contract with the SBE contractor for committed contract value. That, even though they haven't done the work yet, they've made the contractual commitment, it's part of the percentage, so that we know in advance. So workforce numbers, you're right, that's a reflection of a point in time, whereas with with the SBE numbers, you're actually going out to all those contracts which have been committed. Now let's go back to the workforce numbers. There's a couple things going on here, and I'll mention two. I want to mention one other thing that I did forget to say, and I think this is important. And it goes back to some of the questions that Councilman Jones and Rogers were asking. Legally, of course, you know the issue with respect to minority-related goals. Turner Construction Company, and Turner Ozanne is our design builder, they have corporate commitments to minority participation. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that we have had there've been a series of meetings about what happens on the project. Turner, as part of its corporate goal, they have expressed I guess I would call it their private goal, their corporate goal, to obtain 25% workforce minority participation on this project. That is their goal. I believe they're working hard toward that goal, but that reflects a corporate commitment in what they're trying to do. So these activities are important to Turner with respect to the corporate side of their business and what they're privately committing to and trying to achieve on the project. So that's another reason, by the way, that they find it important to look at some of this information and see how they're doing. So I have to distinguish between what our goals are and what we monitor versus what Turner monitors and may provide. To get back to your question, as we move on to the project, a few things are occurring. There are some areas of the work where both local businesses and, for that matter, minority participation is historically higher. Examples are trucking, labor. Later on, we're going to get into some fields of work that historically there have been issues with respect to both local contracting and local participation as well as minority participation. Some of those areas of endeavor will come up as we get further along into the project. So, plus the fact I think there's going to be increasing competition by other projects for resources that may be more limited than we would like, which is to say, trained laborers who have come through the union halls and are journeymen, apprentices or journeymen in their trades. So I don't think, I think we may have opportunities where these numbers are enhanced, but by no means is the question that these numbers are lower because we're early in the project. We're going to have a challenge throughout this project on those numbers.
Madam Chair, second question. When we talk about percentage participation, are we talking about contracts or are we talking about percentage of payroll being paid out?
Well, when we're
that can be a big difference because you can have a large number of small contracts where it's really the payroll that
contracts, SBE, we're talking about contract value. Workforce, we're talking about hours without putting a dollar value on the hour. 1 hour, that's another point. 1 hour of labor is worth 1 hour of labor, regardless of what the pay rate is on that 1 hour of labor for workforce information. Contract value on SBE is contract value.
So it's on the contract value,
Yes.
not the number of contracts.
Not number of contracts. Because you could have I could have a lot of really small contracts and build up that number. The issue is economic impact, and that's got to be contract value.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Greenspan?
Madam President, when are you planning, or when is it scheduled for the next update? Have we done?
I was just talking to Ms. Schmutzer about that. Okay. I think we're going to have to get together with Mr. Applebaum tomorrow or the next day to check his schedule. We'll be looking at approximately 6 weeks, and we do have a couple of things scheduled into September for work session. So we'll figure it out the next day. And I just made myself a note that we would announce at the next meeting as to when the next update would be.
Great, thank you. The reason I asked, Madam President, because I think it'd be appropriate now, dovetailing on Councilmember Gallagher's statements with the GPC, to come and at least present where they are in the process. Because I'll tell you, we can have the most phenomenal convention center, medical mart, and if the exterior on top is barren, we're missing a golden opportunity to help revitalize downtown Cleveland. So I think it's important we get out ahead of this instead of 18 months from now coming back and saying, we don't have any money, we don't have any design, we don't know where we are. So I'd make a recommendation that we, upon your next presentation, have them as part of the presentation.
All right, we can coordinate that. All right, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Applebaum. If there are no other issues for Mr. Applebaum, are there any miscellaneous items of business to come before this work session? Mr. Miller.
Madam President and my colleagues, I would just like to call your attention to a pass out of two items regarding the mid-year budget that we're going to be voting on in the evening session. And the first item is simply a list of all of the financial items that are contained in that budget bill. And the second one is a summary of the presentations that were made by the various departments, a very concise piece that our staff person, Trevor, put together for us. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous business? All right, this is the time for public comment. Has anyone signed in for public comment?
Madam Chair, yes. Councilman Jeff Johnson has signed in to speak.
All right, Mr. Johnson, approach the podium. You're entitled to a generous 3 minutes. We can't cut off your microphone like they do in City
like
Council.
Like in Cleveland, right? I got you. First of all, Madam Chair, and to the council as well as to the executive, I want to say it's a pleasure the first time to be able to be in front of you. We did have your colleague in front of us the other day, and I hope you think we treated you fine. But let me just say, I just wanted to come to you directly that we did make the request of Mr. Applebaum to provide us a little bit more information. We met with the Affirmative Action Workforce Committee and requested to drill down on these numbers of I believe it was 24% actual for the city and 51% for the county, and of course the 35%. And what we're trying to do is frankly just try to figure out that we have actual participation from every aspect of our community, particularly Hispanic and African American. And I'm an attorney. I'm very much aware of the historic nature of what has happened with our affirmative action laws, where we went from MVE to DBE and to SBE. And so I've never requested, or my colleagues have never requested, that there be any illegal use of the numbers, that you still have to stick to the non-racial and non-gender perspective. But that doesn't stop us from informally trying to get through either Turner or through MMPI or both, an idea of whether African American Hispanics are actually working on the job. And why is that important? Obviously, many of us have constituency there, and the majority that are African American. I heard from leaders from over in Hispanic, once they read the paper, that they were having difficulty with employment for Hispanics on this particular job, and that we just want to see if we can get the information, and then we'll determine whether we have a problem. I think that there has been total agreement that we would work it out. It is a concern. Historically, we've had discrimination. We've had these primes. We've had the subs shirk the laws. They've used pass-throughs. They've used front businesses. They've done everything they could to avoid providing full and fair participation for minorities. And so this is what we do to just try to make sure that we are fully in benefit. As a whole city, of course, we have a strong interest in this project. We are also doing this with the casino. We're also going to do this with the Flats East project. There's a number of us on Cleveland City Council that makes sure that the population that is over 50% of the central city in this county, and of course, there's African American Hispanics beyond the city of Cleveland, that there is full participation. So that's why we've asked, and we also want to encourage you to consider, as you are right now, a disparity study. Your predecessors decided that for whatever reason they would not go for a disparity study, so therefore they had to get rid of their MBE law and their FBE laws. And that's my buzz, right?
You can finish your thought. I said you
I'm
would give you a
wrapping up.
generous
I'm
3
wrapping
minutes.
up. I really wanted to come by and just say that I personally want to ask of my fellow colleagues that instead of just going through Mr. Applebaum, officially say to you, this is what we're asking for. And down the line, I would like to talk about the permanent jobs. Beyond the construction and bricklayers and the pipe fitters, there is the people who are dealing with sales. There are people who are dealing with the permanent jobs of this project that we should have also a concern with permanent and fair balance. And you guys are overseeing it more than we are. And I hope our communications will continue. We did have our main person, Natoya Walker Minor, who was on phone calls for updates. They canceled the phone call. So I am encouraging that we strengthen the ability for Cleveland to get certain updates through our OEO department. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Is there any other person signed for public comment?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, once again, we will be announcing the date of our next update at our next meeting. If it becomes available, we will post it on the website. If there's no other business before this work session, is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned until 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. 10 minutes. Yeah, just help me out. Make sure we give them.